Well, welcome everybody to another episode of the 611. I am Ryan Howard, along with my main man over here, Young James.
Young James.
Jimmy Rollins. And Jimmy,
yes,
we got a special one today.
This one.
I'm geared up for this one. No pun intended. I'm all geared up for this one,
rubbing.
I'm all geared up.
Rubbing, smiling.
I love me some cards. So we're in Atlanta, Georgia. My call up year, 2004. So I come down out of the hotel, getting ready to go to the field, and I see my man, Young James, and who was it? Michael Tucker. And they were talking to a guy from a Mercedes car dealership. And I forget what kind of...
The CLS.
It was a
One of the
CLS.
Just dropped.
And I remember walking down. Now, I'm a rookie. I just got called up. So I have 2 nickels to rub together. And I'm looking at that, and I said, man, that looks nice, bro. Like, how much something like that cost? I think it was, what, like 200?
It was
like 100 something. It was like 100 grand, 160 grand, something like that.
It was souped up.
And I was like, man, bro, all I can get is a doorknob or a hubcap. That's about it. And then now, fast forward a few years, I can get the entire car. Okay.
And you've gotten the entire car.
I've gotten the entire car
more.
now. So we grew. But that's where the bad part of it all kind of came in. So I blame Jimmy and
for his
Michael
obsession
Tucker
with these
for that
smaller
obsession
cars. Yes.
for those smaller cars. As we get into today's show, we've got a great show for y'all today. This one is near and dear to me because I love it. He's a friend. This is great. I love cars, as we just talked about. We're going to talk about F1. All right?
Love it.
Now, today, we got the man, the myth, the legend. He is the CEO of Team McLaren, my man, Zach Brown. Zach, welcome to the 611, sir.
Good to be here.
Welcome.
Good to be here. Love to talk racing with my baseball boys.
Man,
Yes,
I love
sir.
it.
We appreciate you spending the time to come join us. Can you take us through the beginning of how it all happened for you? We know you played baseball. You're a huge Cardinals fan. You're welcome for 2011. You can thank Ryan and I for that one. We contributed to that. But tell us about how it just all started for you, the passion and what's led to the success that you are having today with F1.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll rewind to the beginning. Originally from Los Angeles, and I loved baseball. That was always my first passion. But I went to the Long Beach Grand Prix in 1981. I was 10 years old. That was a Formula One race back then. It's an IndyCar race now. And I went. I didn't know anything about the sport, but was just totally fascinated by the speed, the sound. It was amazing. So I started following the sport, but only as a fan because, you kind of know how to get into baseball or basketball or football. You play Little League, you're good, you keep going forward, you get into high school, etc. Racing, my parents weren't involved in it at all, so I didn't have first idea. So I never even really had kind of the fantasy of I want to get into the sport. I just liked it. I watched the Indy 500 Memorial Day weekend. Kept playing ball, was good at ball, but I wasn't good at high school. And unfortunately, if you want to be on your high school baseball team, you actually have to go to high school. And so that's when the baseball career came.
We got to start there.
That's where the baseball career came to an end. And at the same time, in high school, one of my buddies, his family was into racing. And he took me back to the Long Beach Grand Prix in 1987, which was an IndyCar race, and introduced me to Mario Andretti, who's obviously, one of the biggest legends in racing. And I said to him, how do you get started in racing? And he said, karting. And there happened to be an ad in the program for this kart racing school. I had been on Wheel of Fortune Teen Week when I was 13 years old, and I had this stash of his and her watches that I won sitting in my drawer. What do you do with a stash of his and her watches? And I went and sold them at a pawn shop, went and started karting, and then that's how racing started. And I just fell in love with the sport, got totally infatuated with it, and then tried to understand actually how do you become a racing driver. and you have to have sponsorship. I didn't have the family resources to do it, which is kind of someone needs to pay for it. So Wheel of Fortune helped me. Got a little bit of
Shout out
support
Wheel of
from my
Fortune.
parents, yeah, and got it started racing. Raced professionally for 10 years, got to the big leagues, so to speak, and then never kind of made the all-star team, but got really good at doing sponsorship. So I had a lot of people the second part of my career going, hey, you should kind of stop driving and just do all this sponsorship stuff. You seem to have some good business acumen, but when you're playing, you don't want to hear that. That's like a killer to your ego. Someone going, maybe you should try managing and put the bat away. And it's like, well, I'm not ready to put the bat away, but I
100%.
was. And
100%.
so, yeah, so I stopped, built what then became the most successful motorsports agency, looking after the corporate sponsors in the sport, because it's such a big money sport with sponsors. Sold my agency, and then got an opportunity to either go to Formula One, the sanctioning body itself, the MLB, if you'd like, or even cooler, come join McLaren, which was kind of like being player manager. And so I joined 9 seasons ago, won our first world championship in 26 years last year, and then just got back from Saudi, where we won, and we're now first and second in the drivers' championship, leading the constructors' championship, and absolutely loving it.
Outstanding, outstanding. So, what was the hardest part about kind of getting into the driving aspect? What was the biggest learning curve that you had to do when you were going into karting and kind of coming up through the ranks? As we kind of look to compare it to what the minor leagues would be for
sure.
us,
The jungle.
as we call it, the jungle. We
Yeah.
get through those bushes. Do you see those other kids? Like we would say, a lot of first rounders. I always say the first rounders always get the compass, they get the machete, they get the rope, they get everything to be able to try to make it through. And it sounds like you were saying with the sponsorship, because you got to pay to play with the racing. So with that, you might have seen some other kids that might have that, but like, what was the toughest part for you kind of going through that?
It was the money side, because I think our sport's a little bit unique, which is kind of has its more downsides, I would say, than upside, in that we're so equipment dependent, right? So you guys, you're all playing with the same bat, so to speak, where, our equipment, depending on how much sponsorship you have, you can be good equipment, new cars, old cars, you don't have the same amount of tires, your team's not as big. And so I've seen a lot of drivers that I think could have made the big leagues, but they didn't because they never got the opportunity. And then I've seen some guys make the big leagues that shouldn't have made the big leagues, but they had the resources to get there. So the sport's a little bit less pure, if you'd like, than your stick and ball sports, where, if you're a hell of a baseball player, you're going to make it. You don't you're not at a deficit because you don't have a good glove or a good bat or a good tennis racket or good ice skates. And so our sport's almost as much business as it is talent. Then once you get to the top, it's the best of the best. But that was the hardest thing for me, was trying to find the budget to go racing. And so I'd still like to have myself convinced I could have been good enough, but I never got like the equipment that I saw the guys that were winning every weekend. They were just laser focused on the sport. And I remember going to races where I was worried about, did my sponsors get their parking passes? Did the catering show up on time? Where I know some of the guys I was racing against, it was like engineering meeting, engineering meeting, engineering meeting. And I was worried about parking passes. And I don't think in sport you can do anything if you're going to be the best of the best, be totally focused on just the sports side. So that was the hardest part for me, in kind of the part of our sport that maybe lacks a little bit of the purity that I see in other sports, where if you're just talented, you're going to get the chance. Maybe the odd person squeaks in that doesn't have a long career or got missed. But for the most part, I remember going in through high school, all the guys that were the best, they just kept carrying on.
That was interesting, because we were having that discussion when we knew we were going to have you on, and I know there's always an argument. You got Max, who they claim, is the better driver, but you guys have the better car. So when you're at that level, when everybody's tip top, what's more important at that level, that cars are going to be equal? You still want the better car, but the driver has to be able to make that car do what it's designed to do. So is it the car or is it the driver?
So I get asked that all the time, and it's a great question. The answer's both once you get to the very top, but a great driver can only overcome a car so much. And, Max, who's one of the best ever, won, I think it was 7 or 8 races at the start of the year. His car became a little less competitive because more cars became more competitive, and he didn't win a race for 12, 13 races. Same guy who won, well, I think it was 7 out of the first 8 races because his car wasn't up to it. Now, a guy like Max can take a 5th place car and make it a 3rd place car, but it's harder to take a 5th place car and make it a 1st place car. So the first thing you have to have is you have to have the best equipment. But once you get to the margins are so thin, then it does become you got to have the best driver in the world. So when I'm building a racing team, the first thing I want are the 2 best racing drivers in the world, because no matter how good your car is, you got to have the matching drivers, because that's what Ferrari has, that's what Red Bull has, that's what Mercedes has. So you ultimately need both, but you can't overcome a bad car. It's just too much of a deficit, and that's what you see. Look at someone like Fernando Alonso, 2-time world champion. He is one of the best ever, and he's pounding around in 14th place. And it's not because he's a 14th place driver at all, but that's all that car is capable of. And with his teammate, who's running around in 18th place, that's the difference between Fernando and his teammate. But he can only make up for that deficit so much. Fernando will not win in that car in its current state. And that's also frustrating when you see a talent kind of go to waste, if you'd like, because in our car, Fernando Alonso would be winning races.
Yeah, that's interesting that you say, because
That settles the debate.
Yeah, that does.
You know, I mean, because I feel I'm a better driver than Ryan. He just buys more expensive cars. That's all I'm saying.
He's just got better equipment.
There's only one way to try to really settle that one. Try to settle that. We can get out there on the track. But I do
feel
have
like
a question.
the competition's coming on. Feel like the competition's coming
You know, it don't stop.
It always it never stops.
Retirement
It never
just means
stops.
we don't put the uniform on. That doesn't mean we stop competing, as you know.
That's right. That's it. But I do have a question too. Kind of, it's always an eras type of deal, right? So with the cars today, I want to actually ask about, with all the new technology, all the cars are obviously faster. The aero is a lot more aggressive than what it used to be, you know, from the cars of the 70s, 80s, 90s. What is the harder car to drive? And how do you think today's drivers would fare in some of those older cars from like the 80s and the 70s, like the Senna's type cars? And
Yeah. So I've driven them all. You know, I've driven most recently the car that we won. I won my first Grand Prix, and not me as a driver, but as the team boss, the 2021 car. And I've driven 70s and 80s cars. I think the hardest era were probably the 90s, where you had kind of the same amount of power that you have today on a power to weight ratio. The cars were very dangerous and very manual. So, you know, today you can't miss a shift. It's not, you know, it's a semi-automatic gearbox. You click on the, you know, literally with your finger. You don't have to worry about your clutch. You don't use once you get going. It's a hand clutch. Back in the 90s, you were having to do what's called heel and toe. So you're having to go down through the gearbox. You're having to synchronize the RPMs. If you let the clutch out too early, or you don't get the gearbox revs right, you can lock the rear tires. So, and they were unbelievably fast. So I personally think the 90s era's cars were probably the peak of performance, and the you know, very dangerous racing cars. I think reality is today's racing drivers would do just fine then, because, you know, they would have adapted, been what they're used to. At the same time, I've seen some of the, you know, older drivers from that era hop in today's cars, you know, such as myself, and the amount of information is just mentally overwhelming. The drivers have 300 different adjustments they could make on a steering wheel today, all in different codes. I had a drinks bottle and a radio, and I could adjust what's called the anti-roll bar and the brake bias. I had like 5 adjustments. You get in this car now and they start talking to you, and I was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Hold on, I'm going 200 miles an hour. What button do I have to hit again? So, I think a great talent would adapt in any scenario, but I think the 90s cars, and when we take our current drivers and we put them in the 90s cars, they love it because they love the rawness of them. So to me, those were the peak, most challenging cars to drive.
Man, that's like today with baseball. Just the
Right?
information age.
I know.
Like all the hitters have all this information that they can do.
iPads and,
We were
and,
like,
and
hey,
the dugout. Take a
sometimes
swing.
for us,
Yeah.
it was just sometimes it was just, hey, just see ball, hit ball. And just
Literally.
get up there and just be in the moment. As like Charlie used to say, our old manager Charlie Manuel used to say all the time.
Empty mind,
An empty head means a full
full
bat.
bat.
Yep. Yeah.
But on race day, you have the driver and the engineer. Whose car is it really? Like who? Like this is my car. The driver's in there. He's telling them this is what I feel. This is what I need. They're hitting those buttons. The engineer's giving his feedback, and he's seeing what the computers are saying and knows where the numbers are.
So it's a team effort because of how much data is coming in. So to kind of put you on pit wall for a second to answer that question. So there's so much data coming in. We have 1,000 people in a Formula One team. About 125 go to the track. 60 are back at mission control. Like if you think of NASA, the space shuttle's in the air, but everyone's down there on the computers looking at the data. So the driver's only talking to his chief engineer, but the chief engineer is getting tire data, weather data, power unit data, data back from the driver, competitor data. So he's taking all that information in, strategy, communicating with the driver, trying to understand what the driver wants, what we can see on the data, what is playing out. And so the conversation becomes between the two of them. And ultimately, the engineer will make the decision with the driver's input, but the engineer's got all this information coming into them. So we have 300 sensors on the race car. We pull down 1.5 terabytes of data a weekend. So I'll stop there because I would say to my guys, what the hell's a 1.5 terabyte? Put that in English. So
You got to finish high school to understand that.
You gotta,
that is the equivalent of 400 movies or 10 million documents that's coming in. That is just an immense amount of data. And so we need to take that data. We also, the drivers, and it blows my mind away that they do this at 200 miles an hour. We speak in code because we're allowed to listen to each other. So if you think about the third base coach, we know we're being listened to. So if we say, Lando, how are the tires? That might be a real question. We want a real feedback. Or if we say, hey, Lando, this weekend, anything we say after the word tires is a bogus question. Lando, how are the tires doing? We want him to give us a bogus answer because we know that Ferrari's listening to us and they're trying to determine our strategy. And if they hear Lando complaining about the tires, they might go, oh, let's do this on a strategy, he might pit. But actually, the tires are totally fine. So then we come into our camera and imagery, and this is where the data comes in. We might hear Lewis Hamilton complaining about the tires, but we can then go look at his tires and go, wait a minute, he's complaining about the tires, but the tires look totally fine
Tire gate.
to us.
they just, yeah, they
Tire
just,
gate.
So we're doing all these games just like you guys
Yeah,
are doing with the
that's pretty
coach
cool.
of all
Throwing an
that
indicator.
stuff, and everyone's trying to figure out. But the drivers are having to the capacity of their brain. They're going 200 miles an hour. They're on the absolute limit. So kind of think about if you were getting your third base coach sign in the middle of your swing, right? That's what they're having to kind of digest at the same time. So it's fascinating. So ultimately, it's a team effort because a lot of data comes in, but it's only a conversation between the engineer and the driver. My job on pit wall is to observe. I don't have the same amount of data coming into me. So I'm more observing how things are going on. I'll have three things that come up to me. Driver safety. If something we see on the car that maybe is putting the driver's safety at risk, do we park the car or not? Our power unit provider, Mercedes, has the ability to tell us we see a problem with the engine, come in. I can override that, but then I have the financial consequences if something happens to the engine. And then the third is driver swap. Sometimes for strategic reasons or they're on different strategies, we might say, Lando let Oscar by, Oscar let Lando by. Drivers don't necessarily love that idea. So sometimes that'll come up to me for kind of an executive decision. Otherwise, I let the team roll.
Is that something that happens on the track or prior to the race? Depending on
So
what you're
we'll
saying?
talk to the drivers Thursday going into each race weekend of kind of here's the developments on the car, and then after qualifying Sunday morning, we'll sit down and develop a strategy. So this weekend, Lando crashed in qualifying, so he started 10th. So we started him on harder compound tires, and then we had Oscar, who was qualified second on softer compound tires. So they're on different strategies. So we talk about what could happen in that scenario. So in that instance, Lando went what was called long in the race to maximize clean air, but then Oscar, because he'd qualified second, took the lead, was coming up on him, and it was destabilizing Oscar. So we had asked Lando, let's go ahead and pit now so we don't interrupt Oscar's race. So when we have drivers let drivers by, it's usually because they're on a different strategy, one pitted out of sequence, they're on different tire compounds. But you got to have those conversations with the drivers in advance so they understand, hey, they're asking me to let him by because he's on a different strategy and I'm trying to do what's best for the team.
Interesting. Man,
Can you
dope.
imagine that? I mean, I've been a leadoff hitter, so I know what it's like. Take the first pitch. Like, I'm not taking the pitch, bro.
I was gonna say, do you?
Look, I'm not taking the pitch.
You weren't taking
It's like,
pitches?
hey, look, you guys telling me something. I'm at some point I figure I'm going to ignore Charlie. It's a 3-0 count. I'm not looking in the dugout, bro. I'm swinging. If it's here, I'm swinging, and I live with the consequences later. So I imagine it has to be that. All these deets going on, and the driver's like, y'all do what y'all do. I'm right here in the fight.
I know,
it's
yeah.
just-
Well,
You
when you get into like a hit and run call, is it kind of swing as long as it's close?
Yes.
Like,
I mean,
would
yeah,
It's-
you're going to swing
Yeah.
to make contact.
Yeah.
So if it's
unless it's just
down,
ridiculously bad.
if it's down, you're taking a knee to try to get it. If it's whatever, if you chase, you're throwing the bat at the ball. Like you're trying to do whatever you can to try to put the bat on the ball to help protect the runner as much as possible. So yeah, it's cool to see how those signs and the deeks and everything from every team
Never
where
knew.
it's like
Never knew.
we know his tires are good.
So you mean
so we know
so
what
every
the
time we get the
strategy
look
is.
in,
Right.
that's fake. That's fakeness. That's
That's
fake
right.
news.
Right.
I'm thinking we really getting the goods.
Right.
They talking this and that. He's talking about the engine. I'm feeling this. I need a little more of that. And that's all. You know what? I like this.
I like it.
I like
so
this.
so
You gotta
Zach,
figure it out.
let me switch this up
Shout
a little
out to all
bit.
the
So
smart people that
that's
come
it.
up with
That's
this.
it.
Shout out all the smart people
yeah.
that come up with
Gotta
all
love
this
it.
stuff.
So Zach, question for you. All right, so you grew up in California, but you're a massive Cardinals fan.
Yeah.
Weird.
How does that take place? And then how many games were you ever able to try to get out to in St. Louis as a kid, like growing up?
And who was your favorite player?
Yes.
I was always the guy, and this kind of comes back to me being a bit of a punk in school, who was the anti hometown team guy.
Sound just like Young Swedes, my brother. My brother's the same exact way.
So that was kind of my starting point. That was kind of the rebel in me. And then the Cardinals played the Dodgers in a 13-inning game that they won in the early 80s. And Tommy Herr went 5 for 8. So I was a Tommy Herr fan, switch hitter. I played second base and then fell in love with the Cardinals. And then I love the history of baseball. And the Cardinals have, I'm a bit of a walking encyclopedia. So I go back to the Rogers, Hornsby, and the Musial and all that. So became a Cardinals fan. My youngest son is named McGuire. Spelled it differently, but I'm a big baseball guy and have been my whole life. And it's cool. I've been to the Cardinals now. I've been to 26 stadiums, so I've got a few more to tick the box on, which I'm determined to do. I will do. And I never really got to the Cardinals early on. I've been to 1,000 Dodger games and Angels games, and then I'd go to the All-Star game like at San Francisco, and then New York because we travel there a bit. But now I've been pretty much been to most of the stadiums, other than a few of the newer teams.
Can we talk about what it's like? You're facing pressure, to win, and you're trying to accomplish something that hasn't been done in a very long time. And I know when we were playing, we heard about the 1980 Phillies over and over and over, and they're just getting beat over the brow with it. And it's like it's not until you accomplish something of your own, the highest feat, winning the cup, that you can literally put that noise to rest. What was that like for Team McLaren to finally get back on top?
It was epic. That's actually the photo there behind me. I've grown up watching you guys and sports teams having that celebratory moment, and we've now had ours, and I can't wait to do it again, but I don't think it'll ever be as good as the first one.
Right.
And it was epic, and the energy, and it was just all natural. There wasn't prepared speeches. It was just a team coming together to celebrate. It's been 26 years, and it was unbelievable. Up until we won it, the last race was the worst 2 hours of my life. It was interesting. I think there's two types of successful people in the world: those that are motivated by the thrill of victory, and those that are motivated by the fear of defeat. I think the thrill of victory is a healthier place, but I'm motivated by the fear of defeat. So I kind of like, what's going to go wrong? What's going to go wrong? And but I think the drivers, and I bet you guys, if you got up to the plate and had a don't strike out, you'd strike out.
Yeah.
And I think that was one of my problems when I was racing. I was always worried about losing as opposed to like, I'm going to win this thing. So I think the great athletes are focused on, man, I'm going to hit this thing out of the park and get in that frame of mind. And so all my fears came out in that last race.
Man, so that's trust in the process, because shout out to the McLaren Racing, the pit crew.
For sure.
Yeah.
Do they take it personal and like want to have like their own little internal competitions with the other pit crews and say like, no, they can't outdo us.
Right.
We got to do better than that. Let's go.
Now the competition, it's good competition internally, right? Because you don't want to be the guy who's last on with the wheels. So that's a healthy competition. Everyone elevates their game, right? No different than you guys on the field. The guy in front of you hits a home run, you want to go out and hit one twice as far, or whatever the case may be. And but then against the competition, everyone in the sports team wants to be better. Not only the guys at the track, but all the guys and gals here back at the factory. They want to get more sponsors. They want to have more fans. It's a really competitive sport. And I love that side of the sport.
That's dope. So I knew a lot went into it, Ryan.
Man.
I didn't think it was that big. You said 1,000 person
1,000 people.
team
They showed the
on race
team.
day. That's crazy. So it's really a team effort. And when you play sports, you understand, like they see the star. They see the person in front of the camera, but they don't see all the people behind that behind the scenes making that driver or giving that driver the best chances, putting this person in the most premium position to win. And so it's refreshing to know that there's so much that goes into it because it's analytics. We're a sport that's now driven by analytics. And in baseball, I don't really like it so much. A guy still has to throw the ball, still have to hit it, et cetera. But in the racing game, it is 1,000% part of it. You have to have it. You talked about the driver and the equipment. You have to have this team. So, to all the people that don't get the credit, I'm glad you have your competitions. It's like the clubhouse guys that get our uniforms ready, keep our shoes fresh. We need the best to make the orders. They make our life easy. So let's make sure we shout out to those guys.
That's it.
They never
100%.
and ladies, they
trainers.
never really seen.
Totally. Right. It's all about, I think, sport. It's all about preparation, isn't it? Like you kind of win or lose before you take the field.
Yes.
So it's all the people that help get you prepared that make the difference to let these athletes perform at their highest level.
So I love that you said it's all about preparation. So with preparation, some folks have rituals. Some folks may be superstitious, right? Which brings us to
Our
banana boat
ritual
segment. So, Zach, did you have any rituals when you were racing or any superstitions when you were racing? Do you still have any now when you're going to the races now?
I always get into the car from the same side. I always put my left glove on first. I always get in from the left side of the car. I've just been doing that forever. So, but it wasn't kind of I felt jinxed if I did it the other way. It wasn't natural. So I just did the same thing. No different than, right, your prep when you're coming to the plate or in the field. You don't even think about it. You just kind of do the same thing over and over. But I never had any superstitions. What was it? Wade Boggs has to, eat chicken before the game or something like that. So I didn't have any of that stuff. It was just more a creature, a habit of just always doing the same thing, having kind of a process to prepare to get ready for the race.
You didn't do like the Nomar type with the gloves and
No.
Spit on them to
hit the gas.
gas brake dip on them.
Right, you're right.
You had the Willie Stargell armpit. You had all sorts of players do all sorts of fun stuff.
Get that
Yeah,
chicken
exactly.
wing. Yeah.
All right, let's have a little fun.
Oh, yeah.
You're a baseball guy. You're a car guy. And I want to do a little comparison.
All right.
Current, I guess we use current MLB players.
We'll do current.
With
We'll do current.
these drivers. And, we give you a driver name, and you tell us who this would be in MLB. And if you need some assistance, let us know. We know you're up on
I might have to go a
game.
little vintage on you. I might have to go a little vintage on you, too.
Okay.
All right, perfect,
Okay.
perfect. So we're going to start first with Max Verstappen. Who would be him?
I think I've never met the guy, but I think I'd have to say Barry Bonds.
Ooh.
Interesting.
Because we know Barry was clutch. He didn't miss.
No.
It was,
Max never misses,
Yes.
but at least from what I see, Barry had a little bit of an edge to him from what I hear in the clubhouse. So I think Max has a little bit of edge to him.
I like
but
that.
was damn good.
He definitely has an edge to him.
he has
when
an
you
edge
see
to
it.
him.
Yeah, you definitely
Look,
see
like,
that.
you want to be in the inner circle. I'm going to tell you that much
Yeah,
right now.
exactly.
Mr. Lewis Hamilton.
That maybe have to be Mookie Betts.
Ooh, I like that. I like that.
Smooth.
Yeah.
Sweet with
Yeah.
it.
Okay.
He's got
Always
some
looking
style.
nice. The
Style,
style,
the fashion.
The big pieces out of his ear like you.
I mean, hey, you got to do what you got to do.
You got to do what
That's
you
it.
got to do.
You gotta
I
what you
like
gotta
that.
do. I like that. That's a great
I
comparison.
really like that.
He's smooth. He's poised. He always seems like he's very poised
Yeah.
behind the wheel.
Yeah.
Always seems to be very polite, even when he's yelling at people.
Right.
Lewis
Like, when
is
he's
great.
on the radio.
But fiery though. There's a
Yeah,
fire.
there's
You know
a
it's
fire, but it's
there,
like but it's a politeness about it. It's like the car is trash, mate. but it's good though. You know what I mean? It's like
I hear you.
Yeah, but it's still nice. It was like, man, he was still nice about it
Yeah.
at least. So that's good.
All right. Next up is someone near and dear to you, Lando.
Ooh, he's a nice guy. He's a super nice guy. Who's a super nice
Freeman's
guy?
a really nice
Ooh,
guy.
yeah, Freddie Freeman.
really
Freddie
nice
Freeman
guy.
is a really good nice
Yeah,
guy.
he was pretty clutch. He had a pretty
Yes.
good season last year. Yeah, I could see Freddie.
They have that niceness about him, but there's also a little bit of that killer instinct.
100%.
Oh, for sure.
Because when I'm
In the
watching,
bushes. In the
I'm
bushes,
watching the
though.
races,
In the bushes.
I talk to my boy about this all the time because he's a big Formula One fan as well, and we talk about drivers that are like good drivers, but like, do they have that killer instinct? And
Yeah.
I think that's what's like when you get into it later on, that's what separate the championship drivers from all the rest. Like an Alonso is a guy I think has a killer instinct, and I think Lando can have that killer instinct. But
Definitely.
the next guy that I want to ask about,
I like this next guy too.
Charles Leclerc.
Ooh, Leclerc. I think I'd go Bryce Harper.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
That is.
Because Charles has got some emotion in his game, which
Okay.
I love, And that kind of strikes me. I've seen enough of Bryce over the years. It seems like when he gets agitated, he kind of lets you know.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Very
And
good.
don't
I
agitate
like
him because
that.
that's when he goes off. He's like, it's time to lock in.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
you're booing me, you're calling
Yeah.
me overrated, you bring the noise.
Yeah.
I'm gonna show you how
Yeah.
overrated I am.
And he doesn't
goes off.
necessarily like all the umps, does he?
Oh no, not at all.
No.
Something
No.
this guy has in common.
Yeah.
Running down the third base, threatening people.
I mean, that was one time. One time.
That was one time you let it go.
Yeah, that was a tough day. That was a tough day. I think I was like 0 for 4 with like 4 punch outs.
Yeah,
So, yeah, that was a tough
it
one.
happens.
That was a tough one.
And we have one more for you. This next guy is up for Driver of the Year. He also races a McLaren.
Oh,
where
yes,
I'm going,
Mr.
Oscar?
Piastri.
Yeah.
We're going to go with Oscar Piastri.
I would go because he's pretty quiet. He's very quiet. Just gets on with it. And I'm glad to see he's having a mega year this year. My boy Goldie, Paul Goldschmidt.
Ooh, very good.
Arizona, it has to be Arizona Goldschmidt.
Oh, the Arizona
Yeah,
goalie?
Arizona Goldschmidt.
Yeah, because he was a beast, just
Right.
100%.
And he just gets on with it.
Yep.
And he's quiet.
Yep.
Walks quietly, carries a big stick, and he's
Yep.
having a hell of a year.
Yes.
I'm bummed my cards he didn't stay with my cards, but pretty cool to put pinstripes on.
I love Piastri. He's another guy that I see that has that killer instinct. It's starting to come out. I would have said like a Paul Skeens
Ooh.
because Paul's like what? This is second year.
Yeah, young
second year in the
kid.
league, like coming in.
But
just
is Paul really? He's not
announcing-
really quiet though. He's in your face. I mean, I remember seeing an interview, asking about, will he have the success up there in the big leagues, big league hitters. He was like, good luck. That's something that's dear to my heart. I'm gonna talk trash.
Well,
It's
that's
up
true.
to you to make me shut up. I came up in a
that's true.
family that way. My mom, she was my dad was doing the work, so I had a little bit of both. I'm put in the work behind the scenes, but up front, I'm talking trash because I understood psychological warfare. If I
Yeah.
put the pressure on you, you're so focused on beating me, you're not doing your job. Advantage me.
True.
Totally.
And Oscar don't have a mustache yet.
Yeah, right.
If Oscar shows up with a mustache, that'll be great. That'll be great.
And rocking the Paul Skeens pirate uniform.
Right. That'd be dope.
Now that would be absolutely sick.
That would be dope.
That would be absolutely sick.
That would be dope.
You're a collector, correct?
Yes, sir.
What are your most precious collectibles?
I got a few I got a lot of really cool stuff, but I guess the most unique, put aside kind of jerseys because I've got, and it's all game used stuff. So I've got Williams, Mantle, Mays, Aaron. So, that stuff's amazing. But probably the most unique is I've got Pete Rose's rookie trophy, which I think is pretty cool. When he had his issues, he sold everything. So, his 1963 Rookie of the Year trophy.
Wow.
I've got.
That's crazy.
Albert Pujols gave me one of his gold gloves, which was really cool because
Those are nice.
those are nice,
Sorry,
and
Ryan.
not many of those
Ryan
around.
would know.
I don't.
Zach,
I've only
Zach,
heard. I've
we
only
here.
heard stories about them and seen them.
And then I've got Jimmy Fox's 1932 All-Star trophy. So those are
Wow.
unrepeatable. And then probably the most unique is, I don't know if you guys ever remember the Mickey Mantle lewd letter. And if not, you got to Google it.
Please inform us.
Oh man,
There's no
this
censorship on this show.
this is beyond rated R. So I'll give you the headline. In the early 70s, they were celebrating 50 years of Yankee Stadium. So the general manager wrote to the big Yankees saying, can you please fill out this form, which is what's your most memorable moment at Yankee Stadium? And the second was, give as much detail as you can. Wow. And all I'll
This already
say
sounds
is,
to be a bad story. This sounds like a horror
Google.
story.
Google. It wouldn't happen today, but Mickey Mantle could pull it off. And it's a bit of a legendary letter. It's called the Mickey Mantle lewd letter. And I bought that for my collection. And it's just it's all Mickey Mantle.
We got to look into that.
They set him up
That's
to fail.
crazy.
Set him up to fail.
With as much detail. That's
Right.
wild.
With
That's
as much detail, you
wild.
can only believe that to the imagination.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
So as we get close to wrapping this up, and again, thank you so much for the time.
Yes.
My pleasure.
Appreciate it.
I enjoyed it.
Can you speak on getting more women involved in racing and kind of discuss, kind of how we're having these diverse voices or trying to have more diverse voices in the sport?
Absolutely. So I think 60 Scholars is a program that we do with our partners. We started it in our 60-year anniversary, which was a couple years ago, but it was so successful, we've kept it going, which is around STEM, which is obviously very relevant to our sport, of young women ages 18 to, I believe it was 23 to 24, to give them an opportunity to work with us and our partners to be exposed to the different aspects of our sport. And as I mentioned with Netflix, we need more women, more youth in our sport, more diversity. I love diversity. It creates diversity of opinion. I think it creates better output because you're getting more different type of input. And so whether it's women in racing, we have what's called F1 Academy, which is one of that race car right there over my shoulder, where we've got a racing team. We won at the weekend, our first win in what's called F1 Academy, to women engineers, into marketing and finance. So we just want to expose more women, more youth, more diversity to this awesome sport we're in, so they can see that there's a lot of different opportunities. Of course, the most famous aspect is, driving the race car, but we have 1,000 people. We only have 2 racing drivers. So
Right.
there's a lot of different jobs that they can apply for. And so it was all about continually getting them exposed to how they could play a role in motorsports, and specifically with McLaren.
That's amazing, because I have my youngest daughter, Bree. She loves cars, and I kind of threw her in like Ryan. It was when I had the Lamborghini SVJ, and so she would wake up and ask to go into the garage, and she would just sit in the driver's seat.
Yep.
I can see her just imagining driving cars. So to this day, she knows cars up and down. She'll see them. She names them. She gets excited.
It's awesome.
She wants me to get the Lambo Urus. She's like, well, Dad, at least get the Porsche. I'm like, I like my Hummer. It's a big truck. I've kind of gone to the Dance Dad era. But she's one, as I'm hearing about this program, that comes to mind because she really has a fascination with cars. She loves them. She's always pushing me to push the envelope. And I'll get back into the fast car era, but I need the space. I have 3 daughters. They have friends all the time, but I really appreciate that. So Zach, we really appreciate you joining us, spending this time with Ryan and myself on the 611 podcast. Something that my man was almost overly excited about.
No idea.
He's a former McLaren. Do you still have it?
I don't have it.
He's a former McLaren owner, he's working his way back into it. So we know this is serious.
He knows.
Yeah.
He knows what
Yeah.
I'm waiting for. That W1 just came out.
Ooh.
The P1 successor.
Oh.
That came out. So
Okay. And
Pretty mega.
trying to look at that.
So Zach, he's asking for permission to get, within the first 5 names on the list. I'm cut straight to the chase. That's what he's asking. That's what we do.
Cutting to the chase.
Cutting right to it. But thank you for your time. We
Yes,
really
sir.
appreciate it. We appreciate what you've done for the sport. We still appreciate your love for baseball. Although you're a Cardinal fan, we forgive you.
Not everyone's perfect.
Thank you, brother.
Thanks for having me on.
Yes, sir.
Sir.